Those are the Thanksgiving games. And now we're going to go into the Sunday games, starting with the Cincinnati Bengals at home. They are favored by 4.5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. John, who do you have here?
Plain and simple, it hasn't failed me yet. When Pittsburgh is the underdog, I pick them. They cover, and yeah, so I'm going with Pittsburgh here. Also, just in this matchup, the Bengals. It's a divisional opponent. You know, these kind of games get scrappy. I feel like I'd rely a lot more on the Steelers to win a scrappy, ugly game than I would the Bengals. And that's nothing against the Bengals, but in that sort of environment, and I'm assuming that Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden, and TJ Watt are all going to be back in this one because it's a Sunday game, not Thursday. I don't fully know about that.
Joe Hayden's still questionable. For some reason, Ben's still listed questionable. TJ's listed as questionable. But no Minka.
Okay.
So I'm assuming Minka's okay because he's not on the
Well,
injury report at all.
because they missed because of
Oh,
COVID,
COVID.
right?
Okay, I didn't know that. But Joe Hayden's
Um,
still listed as questionable, and TJ
it
and
might be
Ben.
questionable because like maybe I don't know. I'm not gonna speculate anything. I'm gonna just assume they're gonna play,
Yeah,
and even if they don't, they found production. You know when it mattered offensively in their last game. So I think they can just once again they're one of those teams they can scrap. They can find it somewhere, and I'm gonna take Pittsburgh.
yeah. I'm going with Pittsburgh also. Spread's a little bit too big for me. Too. I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati wins. Just because I don't want to fully buy into Pittsburgh's offense yet. Last week it was 27 points in the fourth quarter. It's hard to replicate that in the NFL. I would like to see more consistency. But yeah, like you mentioned, nonetheless, especially if their defense is back, that they're key contributors. I can imagine them giving Joe Burrow and the gang a little trouble. This is a Cincinnati team. Their offense has been a little inconsistent. But last week, I was encouraged. Was a little more patient to run the ball, but however, like I mentioned, we've seen the passing game kind of come back to earth since the first few weeks when they were going off with Jamar Chase and the gang. So yeah, I think Pittsburgh keeps this close regardless. But if I had to pick, I think Cincinnati wins this one, especially being at home and just Big Ben on the road. There's always been a significant difference for some reason when he's on the road as opposed to at Heinz Field. So yeah, I'm going with Pittsburgh as well. Now going over to Indianapolis, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are favored by 3.5, going to the Indianapolis Colts. Jonathan Taylor fresh off that great game, and Tampa Bay fresh off that Monday night win. So John, who do you got going here?
Another game that the strategy has not failed me yet. When Tampa Bay is home, they cover. When they're on the road, they don't. So I'm taking the Colts because they are the home team here, and also the Colts. I think they've just found what they needed to do to win. Their defense is getting into a groove. Obviously, you know they've had injuries, but I think like things have sort of settled down, and they know who's playing where, and guys have really settled in their roles for the people that have had to fill the void for the injured players. And then offensively, Jonathan Taylor has just taken over the last 7 or so games, and it's become an offense that's revolved around him. Earlier in the season, when they started off in that hole, you know, he wasn't really getting as many touches and as much production as he was back then. I think he probably has a mindset shift that he understands like he needs to be the guy for this offense, but also just Carson Wentz, the coaching staff. I think everybody's on the same wavelength now that this is Jonathan Taylor's offense and everything is built around that. And so I'm going to take the Colts here. I also just think that Tampa, they've just had some injuries defensively. Their front seven hasn't been as dominant as they were last year towards the end of the year. So, yeah, I think that the Colts can have success. And even if we're scared of the defense, we just saw what Indianapolis did to Buffalo, and Buffalo statistically is ranked better than Tampa in most stats. So, yeah, Colts.
Yeah, the only thing that does scare me though is Tampa Bay was a better balanced attack. So yeah, once again, the numbers may be a little bit more skewed, and I think that would be a tougher for Indianapolis. But nonetheless, I'm going Indianapolis to at least cover as well. Tampa still no. I mean, Antonio Brown's questionable, but it looks like he's probably not going to come back this week. I know they got Sean Murphy Bunting back on their secondary, but I still have questions regarding that secondary. I'm not in the front. The front four haven't had the front seven hasn't been as good as it was last year. Now maybe they're just kind of waiting the waters, and then towards the end of the season they'll turn it on again. But until I really see that, I'm gonna go with Indy. I see that Quentin Nelson's questionable, but I'm guessing he's going to be trending towards playing, which would be a really helpful for our cause since we're both going Indy. But regardless, I expect Indianapolis offense to have really no issues. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if they pull out a win here. But regardless, I think Tampa will win, take care of business. But it will be a close one. So I as well am going with the Indianapolis Colts to keep it close. But now going over to Miami with the Carolina Panthers. They are favored by 2.5 with Cam Newton going to the Miami Dolphins. 2 is expected to start. So, John, who do you have here between these two?
I'm going with the Panthers. I think that Cam Newton has just made their offense better. And although it wasn't like, they lit up the Washington football team last week, I think they looked good. They had some key stuff. And I think down the field and I think once again, it was like 7 passes that Cam threw over 15 yards and he completed 6 of them. So I think down the field stuff is starting to work. And then also, Christian McCaffrey. I don't know how Miami's going to be able to stop him specifically. And then on the flip side, I'm not neither of us are huge believers in Tua. And I think that Tua is a decent quarterback, but I don't feel super confident in his ability to handle just the speed, I think, specifically that Carolina has defensively. So I'm going to take Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is Miami's offense. Their offensive line isn't great, and I think
Yeah.
this Carolina, the Carolina front 4, front 7, they're going to cause a lot of issues. And I wouldn't be shocked if they just put their offense in good positions. I think we saw last week. You kind of mentioned it. Cam looked good, but also didn't turn the ball over as like that Sam Darnold was doing, and also just added a little bit of toughness and just also the element of him running opened up the offense a little bit more for Carolina. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Carolina wins this one. Once again, I'm not gonna say desperation's a factor because both these teams are on the outside looking in. I just think at the end of the day, Carolina's a little more talented as of right now on both sides. So, and Cam's a veteran, so I think he knows he's going to know how to handle the game as well. So, going Carolina there as well. Another full agreement from both of us. But keeping it in the AFC East, the New England Patriots are at New England. They are favored by 6.5, hosting Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans, fresh off their first loss post Derrick Henry injury. So, John, do you think Tennessee can bounce back, or does New England keep rolling?
I'm gonna ride with New England. They're the hot team right now. They over the last 5 weeks, one could even argue that they're the best team in the AFC. So I just think they've really found their stride. Mac Jones just works perfectly in this offense. The run game is solid. They have so much depth at running back. And then plain and simple, Bill Belichick is just so good defensively at taking away what you want to do. And I think with the rotating door of backs that Tennessee has been working with and the injuries at wide receiver, like Julio's on IR. We don't know. Can you pull up the status of AJ Brown real quick? Because I know that he got hurt last week, went out for part of the game. I think he came back, but still just wasn't much of a factor.
He's not on the injury report. Let me pull up the full injury reports, though.
So, I mean, he might be playing. If he does, I would expect Bill Belichick to 100% just try to take him away. JC Jackson's probably going to follow him.
He wasn't spotted at practice Wednesday, but he's listed as questionable. Now, and once again, because it's things, I'm not sure if it's like a Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if that factors in, but they have him as questionable, and that was updated as of today, the 24th. So
I'm going to assume that if they had practice and he wasn't there, and based on the fact that he did get injured in the last game, that it was probably related to that. So that's my assumption.
Because, I know as an owner of him last year, and I think they're doing it this year, like, he would not practice most of the week and, like, practice, like, Friday and or Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so it's something to keep an eye on fantasy-wise, and I think...
Yeah. Even if he plays, I think I'm still going to take New England just because JC Jackson and all the defensive stuff that Bill can do. I just feel confident in the fact that the way the Patriots play, they're going to take what's given to them. They're going to dink and dunk. They're not going to turn the ball over, and they're probably going to win the turnover battle. So, yeah, I feel pretty confident the Patriots keep rolling, especially without Derrick Henry on the other side.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I'm going New England as well. I mean, New England's basically Bill Belichick, New England, they are the definition of we're willing to win by literally 1 point. That's all we care about. They don't care about blowing you
Hmm.
out. And like you mentioned, offense is good enough with Mac Jones. The pass game may not be, tearing people apart, scaring you, but it's efficient enough to move the ball down the field, keep drives alive, and then we'll let our defense do their thing. And we're confident in our defense and that they're going to get some key stops. So, and yeah, especially
And they
without,
can score. Like they
yeah,
get a lot of pick sixes.
yeah, they're very great. They're very good at creating turnovers. Just seeing your tendencies does scare me though. Once again, like I mentioned last podcast, just Bill Belichick's assistants have always done pretty well going up against Bill. Again, nonetheless, no Derrick Henry. That really bites, and I think he's been very key in their previous wins because he just puts any defense in a bind because you have to invest so much to stop him. Without him, I expect New England to just. I wouldn't be surprised if they just play past the whole game and just say we dare you to try to run the ball. We don't think you can. So with efficiency. So yeah, I'm going New England to win and cover here, and but not feeling great about it. But anyways, so that is that. Now going to a matchup in your division, Philadelphia Eagles. They are favored by 3.5, going to MetLife to play the New York Giants. Going with the Eagles here, John, or the Giants? I know these are like probably two most bitter rivals.
Yeah, this was another tough one. When we were filling out our picks, I actually skipped this one because I just didn't know who I was more confident in. But after what I've seen over Daniel Jones for pretty much the whole season, I just sat there and I thought, man, I could totally envision Darius Slay getting another pick six. Like he's been very good this year at taking away what the other team's top option is, and he's turned a lot of turnovers into touchdowns. He got a fumble six against the Broncos, and then he had a house call against Carolina when it came to an interception against Darnold. And so these are some teams that I just think are, at the time when they played them are now offensively similar to what we have with the Giants. Also, Jason Garrett just got fired. So I don't even know what the offense is going to look like for the Giants. So just plain and simple, I just don't really have a lot of faith in Daniel Jones and whatever offensive scheme they try to roll out. And meanwhile, for Philly, the run game is working, and the Giants are not very good this year at stopping the run. That's been a big difference from them last year and this year. They went from one of the top run stopping teams in the league to basically below average, and I think it's going to keep working. Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, all of them could get heavily involved in this.
Although Jordan Howard, doubtful, but regardless, I really don't think it
No,
matters with those three guys.
like they got running backs on running
Well,
backs.
and their line, like we mentioned, just great. Just they got a great, good run blocking, big O line. So yeah, I'm right with you. I'm going with Philly as well. I mean, you really hit all the reasons. Yeah, I'm not gonna really add much more on that. Like you mentioned, not really confident in the Giants' offense, especially making a new offense within a week and everyone figuring out their new roles. And then yeah, Phillies figured out their formula. And then if you try to invest more and stop in the run, bring guys in the box. I mean, Devonta Smith, like we said, Dallas Guard, those two guys are good enough and dangerous enough to get open on and win their one-on-ones more often than not. So, yeah, I'm right with John. We're both going Philly there to beat the Giants. Sorry, Tyrone, but also not sorry. Anyways,
Definitely not.
um, going on to another game, we're gonna probably breeze over the Atlanta Falcons, favored by 2.5, going to Jacksonville. Um, one second. So, anyways, now we're back. So, John, what's your pick for this Jacksonville Atlanta game?
I'm going to take the Jags. The Falcons, just simply put, over the last 2 weeks have had zero offensive production. They've scored 3 points over the last 2 games. And I think they'll score more here than they have because I don't think the Jags are as good as the Cowboys or the Patriots. But they're still just not scoring a lot. So them being the favorites, don't feel super confident. Plus, Jacksonville's at home.
Yeah, I'm going with Jacksonville also. I think their defense is pretty, like we mentioned last podcast. I kind of like what I'm seeing with their defense. It's a fast defense. They're built on speed. They fly around, do some creative stuff. And I think the offense, especially Trevor Lawrence, not really talked about, taking care of the ball a little bit more. I know he's not ripping up the numbers that he was putting up at Clemson, but it's a growing process. And I just think that right now they're the more talented team, and they just have more ability for explosive plays and playmakers. So yeah, I'm going Jacksonville as well there. So yeah, but we both agreed on Jacksonville for that game. Now going on to another exciting game. Note my sarcasm. At the Houston Texans are at home. They are favored by 2.5, hosting the New York Jets. New York Jets do get Zach Wilson back this week from his previous injury. No Mike White or Joe Flacco though. Mike White, I think they're both out to COVID. I know Mike White is for sure. Anyways, John, who do you have here and why?
I'm going to take the Jets. Just I've done this before in previous matchups between some bad teams. I just take the team that's the underdog because it feels a bit safer when it's two teams that really we don't know what we're going to see because both of them aren't very good. And I also just think that Elijah Moore is just really doing well. And so I think that he could have a really solid performance against a Houston secondary that's not very impressive. And although Houston did just come off a big win against Tennessee, I mean, the Jets beat Tennessee too, and that was with Derrick Henry healthy. So that happened. And then also, simply put, the Texans in that win, it was large in part to their defense. I'm not sure I'm confident they can replicate that. So I'll take the Jets.
So I'm actually taking the Texans. I think that they can replicate some of their success. No Michael Carter for the Jets, and the run game already wasn't great. Michael Carter was, just I think he really just opened up another backfield option for them, but he's also doing solid in the run game. But I think losing him hurts, and I think that's the key factor because they're probably going to be a little bit more one-dimensional this game. We'll see if they help Zach Wilson out like they did with Joe Flacco and Mike White with some creative screens and plays, or if they go back to kind of the vanilla offense that they were running beforehand. Regardless, I think Houston just pulls it out. They're at home too. There's not much to go off of here. I just get the feeling Houston's got a little more momentum now, and especially Tyrod's starting to get back into form a little bit. I think as much as I like Zach Wilson, I'm more confident that Tyrod Taylor's going to take care of the ball at the end of the day more than Zach Wilson. And just, Tyrod's a better runner just right now. So going Houston here to win and cover. So one of our few disagreements. I haven't had many this week. So one of our few disagreements of the week. Now going to Mile High with the Los Angeles Chargers. They are favored by 2.5 against the Denver Broncos. Broncos fresh off their bye week. Chargers just won that crazy Sunday night game. John, do you think that the Chargers can keep it up?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chargers. I'm a bit surprised that the spread is this small, even though it's at Denver and Mile High. Things get a little crazy there. I don't really believe in Teddy Bridgewater and that offense's ability to keep up with Justin Herbert. So plain and simple, I'm taking the Chargers.
Yeah, I really wanted to take Denver here. I even thought about it right now, just because I know the Chargers still have issues with the run defense. But I mean, for the most part last week, like we mentioned, Brandon Staley kind of just loaded the box, and then you'd have guys drop out in the pass coverage. So he really kind of forced you to call his bluff per se, and especially with Teddy Bridgewater too. I imagine as of right now, I'm not confident Teddy's going. He won't lose you the game, but I just don't think he'll make enough game-changing throws as opposed to Herbert. I think will on the other end, and yeah, it's the Chargers are just kind of on the roll, and that's why I'm really going lean with the Chargers. They've been finding ways to win games. Hasn't been always been pretty like last week, but they got a lot of confidence, and I'm going with the Chargers. But honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Denver finds a way to run the ball. Watch this be the Javonte Williams game where they just feed him like you and I have been wanting all season. He goes crazy, and then we're sitting here next week like, oh, the Javonte Williams games happen. Like, wow, thanks. But anyways, so that is we both went LA Chargers there for that divisional matchup. Now going on to what should be one of the more fun games of the weekend. LA Rams favored by 1.5, traveling to my Packers at Lambeau. John, who do you have here?
I'm going to go with the Packers after what I saw last year when they faced them in the playoffs. That was a different Rams team. There was no Von Miller, no Odell Beckham Jr., a few other additions, no Matthew Stafford, right? But I think that the thing that makes me the most confident in this is that I saw Green Bay and they had creative ways to get guys involved, specifically Devontae Adams against Jalen Ramsey. We saw that one touchdown that he had where they just forced the corners into a switch that led to miscommunication. And then, all of a sudden Devontae's in the end zone with the ball. So yeah, I just plain and simple, I believe in the Packers' ability to be creative offensively, to overcome Aaron Donald and Von Miller and all those kind of guys. And we saw Sean McVay, a guy with a very similar offensive system, a very similar, methodology and similar roots. Kyle Shanahan did the same thing that we're talking about against the Rams. Just what was that, 2 weeks ago, or was this last week when they played? I think it was 2 weeks ago because the Rams were a bye week last week. Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, we saw Shanahan and what they were able to do offensively against the Rams and overcome, some of those guys. So taking the Packers.
I'm not really doing this. I know I did this before, but I'm not doing this. Oh, okay. Maybe I'm kind of doing it so that the Packers win. Nonetheless, I'm actually going with the LA Rams here. I got, especially with Kevin King questionable, still no Jair, and a bye week to help the LA Rams. It's just, I expect them, even if they are going to be pass heavy, which I think is the way to beat us right now, I'm just not confident in the health of our defense. And then also it's always tough to come back after a really tough loss like last week where he had opportunities at the end. We almost picked off Kirk literally twice. One Douglas went by his ear, and then Savage dropped the other one. And then, so I'm going LA Rams. I think I wouldn't be shocked if they win. What does scare me though about that pick is it is a little bit cold in Green Bay. A little bit. It's like in the 30s as of right now. Expected to be that for game day, although no snow. So not that I'm worried about it for the Packers, more for the LA Rams. First time. It's always tough whenever as any person, I don't know if you experience it, whenever you walk out, when you first really feel winter, you're like, oh crap, like it's getting real cold. I feel like I'm worried that might happen with the LA Rams. But nonetheless, I just think, I would imagine, especially with Odell just requiring him and things like that Sean McVay is going to have a lot more creative plays, concepts, whether it be for Odell or other people. Like, they got to win. They got to get back on track. And right now, Green Bay just feels like we're kind of picking ourselves up still after that Minnesota game. So, yeah.
I'm hoping there's snow because it just makes me think of AJ Dillon, man. That guy in the snow, he was a beast last year.
Okay.
For my fantasy team, I would need that.
Okay, I'm going to switch my pick. I'm going Green Bay. I forgot about an AJ Dillon factor. Just because the Rams are built on speed, although we did lose Elton Jenkins, I'm really hoping it gets cold. So I'm sorry. Sorry, everyone. I'm going Green Bay. I love AJ Dillon. I've been loving what I'm seeing. I think he is the X factor, but it's a tough game.
Bruiser.
He had a type of game like this back when we played Tennessee. Remember, I was like, we're not going to beat Tennessee and Derrick Henry. Granted, that's a whole nother juggernaut that we had to face. But okay, so I'm going Green Bay. John's convinced me. If I'm wrong, then I'm going to do the thing that I did the last few years, where I'm just going to start picking against them every week. My record be damned. Anyways, keeping in that division, actually, both two teams we were just kind of mentioning, the San Francisco 49ers, they are at San Francisco, favored by 3.5, hosting the aforementioned Minnesota Vikings. Two teams that we mentioned, desperations kind of creeped in for both of them, and they've won recent weeks. Now they face each other. Probably a pivotal matchup for the playoffs. Probably winner probably would make the playoffs. Loser probably won't. John, who you feeling for this one?
I'm gonna go with Minnesota here. I don't know. I just, whatever I saw last week offensively with them just force feeding Justin Jefferson. Kirk finally got it, really going. He had a really great performance. I think they can have similar success against the San Francisco secondary that I don't think is super talented. I think they have a great scheme, but ultimately, I don't know. I think if this turns into a shootout, I just like what I see out of Minnesota more so than I do out of San Francisco. My worry is that Shanahan's going to keep doing what he does and rely on the run. And that could be a killer because I could see it working well. But I don't know. I have this feeling that Minnesota is going to keep this one really close, if not win.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to look up injuries. Elijah Mitchell's still questionable. That's tough. Nonetheless, I'm going to go San Francisco for this game. Like you mentioned, I think Kyle Shanahan will find ways to move the ball on offense. I mean, Packers were able to last week, and like you mentioned with our game, Matt LaFleur is from the Kyle Shanahan tree of offense. Except Kyle Shanahan's better than Matt LaFleur as an offensive mind. That's just the way it is. Um, and then it was a huge win for the Vikings last week, and it does scare me that Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen against that Niners secondary. But Niners are at home, and I imagine they find some way to slow them down. Maybe it's their front four. I'm not sure, but they find some way to slow down that Minnesota offense. Maybe it's just with their offense, like I mentioned. Maybe their offense just does more and eats up the clock or something of the sort. I just got a good feeling about the Niners. Call it more of a gut check, but it was a really tough one. I could easily see Minnesota win this game as well. This is like I mentioned, another good game. I'll be flipping back and forth between this one and the Packer one come Sunday. So that is another disagreement for us. And now going to the Sunday nighter, a AFC North battle between the Baltimore Ravens at Baltimore. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Cleveland Browns. Who are you feeling for this one, John?
Uh Man, this was a tough one just because I don't feel super confident in Cleveland out of what I've seen the last few weeks, but at the same time, I don't feel super confident in Baltimore. I don't know the status of Lamar Jackson. I assume he'll be back from whatever illness it
Yeah,
was.
I
It
don't
wasn't
see him on the
COVID
injury
related.
report at all right now. I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was close that he missed last week anyway, so he could have played. So I assume he'll be back. But even then, I mean, they just have a lot of injuries on the offensive line. Even Hollywood Brown didn't play last week. Their secondary is banged up. I don't know. I feel like in this sort of a game, I could see them, the Browns just doing what they do, which is rely on Nick Chubb. I think Kareem Hunt is getting close to coming back. I don't know if he's going to be officially back this week or not. Um, but
He said
regardless,
he expects to play,
okay,
but he still. It'd be one of those you have to watch if you have him on fantasy or just matchup wise. You have to watch on
yeah,
Saturday because he's still technically on IR, but they can activate him off
right.
IR Saturday.
If he's saying he expects to play, I think that makes it even stronger. The pick for the Browns. That just once again, I don't feel super confident in either team, but with the Browns and their top two running backs potentially both being back in a scrappy sort of game, I feel more confident at least their ability to cover that 3.5 point spread. Maybe they lose by a field goal, if not win it.
Yeah, and I think really looking at the injury report too, they may get back right tackle Jack Conklin. I just see that
That'd be
today
big.
they have designated him to return from IR, so maybe not come back. But nonetheless, like John mentioned, you get back both those running backs. Nick Chubb looked good last week, and we mentioned Baltimore's defense just not as good as it typically was, and John just mentioned too, and I can confirm on the injury report. Also, guys in the secondary are hurt. This is gonna be. I'm probably gonna be wrong because I thought the Chargers Steelers game would be a kind of a boring game, but I feel like this could be a boringish game, like a 20 to 17 game, a lot of field goals, and the Browns pull it out. But also wouldn't shock me if Lamar pulls off something. But like with John, I'm just going with the better team for now, and especially missing a week of football. Although Lamar's great, it's tough to miss a week of football and come back and just be right back in game shape with the live action going on. So I'm going Cleveland as well, but not feeling amazing about it. So that is actually our last agreement of the week. And now we go to the Monday Nighter, last game of the week, with the Washington football team. They are at home, favored by 1.5 against the Seattle Seahawks. John, who do you got here?
I'm going to take Seattle. It's tough because Russell Wilson, we know that he's been rushed back, whatever, all that stuff. And I think that's still possible here. But just plain and simple, Washington statistically this year has been the worst defense against the pass. They're just against opposing quarterbacks, even like in fantasy wise, they've allowed the most fantasy points against opposing quarterbacks in the league. Obviously, fantasy doesn't necessarily completely translate to real life success, but if they're putting up a lot of points, that means quarterbacks are producing a lot of numbers against them. And so I think if this is the final straw, I think, for me in Seattle. If Russell doesn't fully look like Russell in this game, I'm not sure if he's ever going to for the rest of the year, unless maybe the injury is still holding him back. I don't know, but they're playing a defense that they should have ample opportunity to have success against because their secondary just hasn't been very impressive. There's no Chase Young. Plain and simple, they should be able to put up points. So I'm going to take Seattle. If I'm wrong on it because Russell has another bad game, I'll accept that, and that's the risk I'm willing to take.
All right, well, I hope you're wrong because I'm off the Seattle bandwagon. I'm off it for now, and I'm going Washington. Taylor Heine. I think especially last week against a good Carolina defense, they found ways to move the ball efficiently. Antonio Gibson has, and just the run game in general has been a little bit more consistent. They've been leaning on it a bit more, and although they lost Chase Young, the defense has been better. I mean, granted, they played Cam Newton last week, but it beat the Bucs 2 weeks ago. And I think the Bucs have a pretty solid, pretty similar kind of plan of attack from Seattle. Obviously, the Bucs are much more talented and well coached, but they want to run the ball and then from there establish play action, things like that. And I think we all know right now Seattle, I'm just not confident in the run game, and the pass game isn't creative enough. And then on top of that, Russell, like John just mentioned, like Russell Wilson, we don't know if he's even 100% or what's going on here. There's just too many question marks with Seattle for me to feel comfortable picking them. So, especially with this small of a spread, 1.5, we're basically picking who is going to win. I'm just going to go with Washington and the home team. And yeah, like I mentioned last podcast, I think this is it. Sorry, Seattle fans, but I think this is Russell's last year. I think just both sides need to move on. Just because his contract is kind of handicapping y'all from doing anything. Granted, y'all also missed on draft picks, and now you don't have draft picks. It's just kind of a whole mess. I think both sides just need a reset, but who knows? I could be proven wrong. They win this game, and they run the whole 10. They run the table. This year's been like that. So, honestly, I wouldn't shock me at this point. So, those are the picks. We only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think either 4 or 5 disagreements. I keep forgetting to highlight them. 5.
We got 5.
Okay, so we have an odd amount. So we'll see. Knowing what's going to happen is one of us is going to get the 1-game lead. We're going to split the others. It's going to come down to the Monday Nighter. Is what it's going to like it did last weekend. Well, almost the last weekend. Last weekend I was up 2 games going into the Monday Nighter, and that did not go well for me.